I never dreamed the turkey I'd roast every Thanksgiving, stuffed with sage from the window box and stories from the old country that Siobhan would tease me for embellishing, the house thick with the scent of cranberry relish bubbling on the stove and my daughter Siobhan's laughter echoing off the clapboard walls like a Kaylee tune gone wild, would one day mock me from a frozen TV dinner tray balanced precariously on my lap, the postcard from Hawaii propped against the salt shaker like a cruel punchline scrawled in her looping cursive. Living the dream, Mom. Found my light here. Aloha and all my love. It was that first solo holiday in my Dorchester triple-decker, the November wind howling off Boston Harbor like a banshee's wail tearing through the bare elms on the avenue, rattling the storm windows. Clarence had cocked himself back in '89, and I sat at the oak table we'd refinished together in the garage one sticky August weekend in '82, the varnish still sticky under my elbows as I poked at the overcooked peas with a fork that scraped the foil like nails on a chalkboard. The microwave's insistent hum had faded minutes ago, leaving only the relentless tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Clarence's pride from a flea market in Quincy, its chimes now mocking the hours with a dirge-like gong, and the distant rumble of the Red Line tea snaking through the neighborhood like a vein pulsing with lives that weren't mine anymore. 65 years I'd carried on my back, widowed these 10 long years since his ticker quit mid-roar during a Red Sox rally at Fenway Park. Me in the bleachers beside him under Section 14, Row G, screaming his name over the roar of 38,000 faithful fans as a foul ball sailed into the green monster. His body slumping forward against mine. His socks cap tumbling into the aisle like a fallen halo. The warm spill of his beer across my lap, the last sensation before the world blurred into sirens and strangers. And menopause's final, traitorous hot flash encore still sneaking up on me like a prankster nephew in wool socks on the linoleum, turning my cheeks to glowing embers even in the damp chill seeping through the cracks, a reminder that change, as they say, comes whether you're ready or not. But the real heartbreak, the one that clawed at my chest like a cat after the cream? It wasn't just the empty chairs around the table, those mismatched seats I'd pulled from basements and yard sales over the decades, the one with the wobbly leg where Clarence always sat, the booster Finn had outgrown but left his sticky fingerprints on like a claim. It wasn't the silence where little Finn's high-pitched, pass the cranberry sauce, NaNoWriMo, extra lumpy, used to ring out, his turkey hat from the craft fair wobbling as he banged his spoon on the edge of his plate like a tiny drummer boy in a holiday parade. No, listener, the gut punch was the mystery gnawing at my bones like the winter damp that swells the floorboards in these old triple-deckers. Why my Siobhan? My only girl, my Colleen with a fire in her eyes, would elope without a whisper, without a goodbye hug squeezed tight on the front stoop or even a hurried phone call from Logan Airport to say she'd landed safe amid the palm fronds and trade winds. Vanished to some sun-drenched paradise across the Pacific, trading the harbor's gray fog for turquoise waves and luau fires, while I aged alone in this saltbox suburb, the clapboards peeling like old skin under the relentless New England weather, the harbor's fog rolling in nightly like uninvited ghosts to whisper accusations in my ear. What fear or forbidden flame had stolen my girl from the nest I'd feathered with every sacrifice? From double shifts slinging oysters at the Union House to stitching hems till my fingers blistered for her prom dress. Leaving regrets stacked like those unopened boxes in the attic, dusty with mothballs and memories, each one heavier than the last? Oh darlin', that postcard's cheerful hibiscus bloom, stamped with a lei-wrapped Elvis impersonator from some kitschy chapel in Honolulu, hid thorns deeper than any wild Irish rose from the hedgerows of Kerry, promising an unraveling of the sacrifices I'd poured into her life like strong tea into a bottomless cup at a wake, secrets buried under layers of family lore and unspoken pains, and a redemption I'd have to stitch myself from the frayed edges of what was left, needle by trembling needle. In the quiet hours when the tea fell silent and the gulls went to roost. Pull up a chair by the hearth if you can feel that chill already, loves. Because the warmth we kindled through decades of blizzards, block parties, and unbreakable reels? It was flickering out slow, storm-brewed and relentless, with winds that would howl through every corner of my soul, rattling the foundations before the first light of dawn could break over the harbor. Ease and slow now, like settling into the worn cushions of the back porch glider where Clarence and I used to sway on summer eves, the chains creaking a lullaby as the harbor breeze carried the tang of salt and distant foghorns. And let me spill this tale like weak tea at a wake, the kind we brewed strong back in County Kerry with a fistful of leaves and a prayer, but watered down here in the States to suit the Yank palate that prefers its bitterness softened with a splash of milk and denial. I'm Maureen. Mo to the bingo hall gals down at the Knights of Columbus on Freeport Street, the feisty flock of widows and whatnots who drag me out every Thursday night for penny pots under the low-hanging lights, pots of decoff that taste like watered-down regret and gossip thick as chowder, though these days, with my silver bob cropped practical against the nape to keep the sweat at bay during those rogue hot flashes that ambush me mid-sentence, and crow's feet fanning out from my eyes like tributaries off the Charles River mapping every laugh we'd shared and every loss that carved deeper. I wear 65 like a well-worn Aran sweater knitted by Nana herself. Cozy in the memories it holds, the wool soft from years of hugs, but threadbare at the elbows were the elbows of life. Clarence's passing, the cancer's scrape, Siobhan's growing pains, have rubbed raw and relentless. Born in the mist-shrouded hills of County Kerry where the Atlantic crashes eternal against cliffs that whisper of famined ships sailing west and fairy rings blooming in the peat bogs, I was shipped over at 12 on a creaking transatlantic boat reeking of boiled cabbage and the desperate dreams of a dozen aunts who'd stuffed my coat pockets with rosaries wrapped in rye bread, their blessings heavy as the sea air. Go strong, Maureen girl. America's the pot at the rainbow's end, but mind the snakes along the way. Landed in South Boston, or Southie as we stubborn lots still call it despite the maps, where the three-deckers huddle shoulder to shoulder like old gossips trading tales against the gales whipping in from the outer harbor, their turrets topped with rusted antennas that snag the sea spray like forgotten fishing lines cast too long ago. My triple-decker on Dorchester Avenue, third floor up the creaky stairs that protest every step like an old friend's complaint? It's a time capsule of salt and sentiment, every nook etched with a patina of lives layered thick. Lace curtains from Nana's Hope chest in Killarney, yellowing delicate in the window frames where they filter the afternoon light into patterns on the Persian rug Clarence haggled for at a yard sale in Neponset. The kitchen's linoleum patterned in faded yellow checks like the buttercup fields back home, scarred from decades of dropped pots and spilled gravy during holiday feasts. And the double-hung windows with panes warped from years of nor'easters, rattling with the orange line teas rumble every quarter hour on the dot, framing the harbor where gulls wheel and scream like the unquiet souls of immigrants past, their cries mingling with the foghorns moaning low from the grave's light. Clarence, my burly beat cop with the fiddler hands that could coax a mournful lament from a cheap violin bought secondhand in J.P. Licks or a blush from my cheek with a wink over morning coffee. Built our life here brick by clapboard. Him patrolling the narrow streets from Castle Island's fort to City Point's docks, badge gleaming under street lamps that buzzed like angry bees, while I pulled double shifts waitressing at the Union Oyster House down on the wharf, dodging the slurred propositions of lobster-red tourists in cable-knit sweaters imported from LL Bean catalogs and dreaming of Thanksgivings grander than the Galway fairs I'd only read about in dog-eared postcards from cousins who'd stayed behind, their ink smudged with peat smoke and promises. Widowhood hollowed me out at 55 like a gourd cove for Samhain, Clarence keeling over mid-cheer for a Fenway foul ball that sailed lazy into the green monster like a bad omen sent from the old sod. Me crammed in the bleachers beside him under Section 14, Row G, the air thick with peanuts and profanity as I screamed his name over the roar of 38,000 faithful. His body slumping heavy against my shoulder, his socks cap tumbling into the aisle amid spilled Cracker Jacks, the warm gush of his beer. Across my lap the last, absurd sensation before the world dissolved into a whirl of sirens wailing over the Mass Pike and strangers' hands pressing me back from the chaos. The wake at Timothy's on the avenue was a blur of corned beef platters and condolences murmured in brogues thick as the fog, the bagpipes keening, Amazing Grace, into the harbor mist till my throat ached from sobbing, the reception line snaking out the door past the butcher's window where hams hung like judgment. Menopause piled on ruthless in the months after, power surges turning my nights into private infernos where I'd bolt upright in the brass bed we'd shared, sheets twisted like accusations around my legs, fanning myself with the TV guide from the nightstand, its pages open to the crossword Clarence used to tease me over, while whispering half-prayers to the empty side where his snores used to rumble like distant thunder. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. If this is the change they croon about in the women's mags, at least give me bingo winnings to buy an air conditioner that doesn't wheeze like old Mr. O'Leary. Humor was my only faithful fan in those sweats, quipping to the mirror in the mornings as I pinned back the curls that frizzed wild. "M.O. love, you're not fading. You're just glowing a bit too fierce for the neighbors." Resilience? Ah, it's our Celtic fire, darlin'. Burns low through the peat bog of loss and the brambles of betrayal, but never gutters out completely, no matter how the winds howl. I battled breast cancer at 58, the lump discovered during a routine self-squeeze in the shower one drizzly October morning. Water beating on the tiles like tears as I stared at the walls peeling wallpaper. The diagnosis handed down in the sterile hush of Kearney Hospital's oncology wing like a sentence from Judge Judy herself. Chemo stole my curls in fistfuls that clogged the drain like autumn leaves in the gutters, but not my quips to the reflection in the clinic's window as the four dripped slow. This wig's my new crown, lads. Queen Mo don't bow to baldness, and neither do the hot flashes that tag team me now. Remission came like a governor's pardon after 18 months of wigs and worry, lighting the path to my redesigned post, 50 with a clarity sharper than the harbor lighthouse at Spectacle Island. I joined the quilting bees at the Dorchester Senior Center on Bowdoin Green every Tuesday, the room humming with sewing machines and stories swapped over thimbles of tea, turning scraps of Clarence's old flannel shirts from his cop days, plaid blues and grays stained with coffee rings, and Siobhan's baby. Blankets from the church bazaar into wall hangings that told our tales. Crashing waves for the harbor's moods, shamrocks for the old country's luck, fiddles bowed low for Clarence's ghost. Sold them at the Quincy Market Flea on weekends when the tourists thronged the stalls. A hobby blooming into pocket change that bought me a second-hand Schwinn bicycle with a basket for yarn runs to the craft shop on Center Street and a sense of purpose that stitched the holes in my days tighter than any needle could. Siobhan was my miracle from the very start. Born squalling into this world on a St. Patrick's Day blizzard that shut the city down, with her dawes-piercing blue eyes that could spot a lie from across the room like a hawk on a mouse and my stubborn chin that jutted out like the bow of a clipper ship slicing the Atlantic when crossed. That girl the spark in our salt-shaker world of overtime checks cashed at the bank on Washington Street and oyster shifts that left my feet throbbing like they'd walked the Blarney Stone. We were a trio tight as a reel set at a ceilidh in the parish hall, feet stomping parquet to the fiddle's cry. Thanksgivings in this very dining room, the oak table, scratched deep from decades of elbows propped for storytelling and errant forks chasing peas across plates. Groaning under the weight of a 20-pounder turkey-eyed brine overnight in the clawfoot tub upstairs, the salt water sloshing as I stirred with a wooden spoon worn smooth from years, stuffed with sage snipped fresh from the window box that overlooked the alley cats and sage for Clarence's whim because a cop needs his sea legs to chase the baddies, Mo, and nothing steadies like a bit of oyster in the mix. I'd carve at tableside with his old pearl-handled pocket knife, the blade nicking the board with a familiar thunk as Siobhan belted, "Danny boy" off-key after the grace. Her voice cracking on the high notes but full of the joy that made the room glow warmer than the candles flickering in the brass holders from our wedding. Her laughter bubbling up like the Charles River in spring thaw. Finn not yet a gleam in her eye but the promise of more chaos to come dancing in her gaze. "Mom, your gravy's pure magic. Don't you ever change a thing about it or this table," she'd say, leaning across the linen to hug me fierce, her perfume a mix of vanilla from the pies baking in the oven and the ambition that simmered in her like stew on the back burner. Her curls tickling my cheek as the cranberry relish I'd chopped till my wrists ached from the knife's rhythm sat jewel red in its cut glass dish. Highs like that soared skyward, unbridled and bright as the fireworks over the harbor on the 4th, joyful flashbacks to her prom night at the Boston Latin School in Fenway, me in a cramped kitchen off the dining room pinning her corsage of white orchids, pilfered on discount from the florist on Columbia Road, to the bodice of that thrift store gown she'd found at the Goodwill on Geneva Avenue. My hands trembling not from the arthritis that would come later but from the swell of pride that choked my throat. "Go conquer the world out there, my Colleen. You've got the fire of the cliffs of Moher in those eyes, and the luck of the Irish to light the way." She'd whirl for the full-length mirror we'd hung crooked in the hall, the skirt of the gown flaring like a wave cresting in a squall, and plant a lipstick kiss on my cheek that left a smudge of rose. "Couldn't do a bit of it without you, Mom. You're the anchor holding the whole ship steady and does the sail." Tommy arrived then in his rented tux that pinched at the shoulders, his shamrock boutonniere askew, and off they went into the Boston night, the limo honking as it pulled away from the curb, leaving me on the stoop waving till the tail lights faded into the avenue's glow, tears pricking but joy fuller than the harbor at high tide. Family rhythms pulsed with that easy, unbreakable love back then, layered with the little phrase I mended like a seamstress with a needle dipped in patience and a prayer whispered to St. Bridget. Nothing a hot buttered rum by the fire or a heart-to-heart over leftover pie couldn't fix before the dawn. Enter Tommy O'Brien, her high school sweetheart from the plumbing apprentices at the vocational school on Columbia Point. stocky as a longshoreman loading crates at Conley Terminal with forearms like coiled ropes and a shamrock tattoo peeking from the rolled sleeve of his Union shirt. His laugh booming like summer thunder rolling in from Hull Gut on a clear day. They married at 22 in St. Brendan's on Dorchester Street, the church bells pealing triumphant over the avenue like a blessing straight from the saints in their niches. Me in my one good emerald silk dress from the Filleen's basement clearance rack. The hem let out twice for weight. Clarence teased was curves of a goddess. Tears blurring the stained glass saints as Siobhan walked the aisle on her da's arm, her veil a cloud of tulle borrowed from a cousin in Quincy. The organ swelling with Ave Maria, till the rafters shook. Little Finn arrived at 24, a red-cheeked imp with Siobhan's wild curls that tangled like harbor kelp and Tommy's gap-toothed grin that flashed mischief. Grandparenting my instant reset button after Clarence's passing turned the house to echoes. Lazy afternoons on the back porch swing where the harbor breeze carried the tang of salt and low-tide mudflats. Me spinning yarns of leprechauns hiding pots in the blue hills while he bounced on my knee to the rhythm of the glider's chains, his sticky fingers from grape juice tangling in the wool of my cardigan as he begged. Nana Mo, tell the one with the selkie who stole the fiddler heart again. His hugs were small joys that chased away the widow's chill that settled in my bones like the damp that seeped through the foundation after every rain. A glimmer of hope in those fleeting moments that made the empty bed at night bearable. The pillow on Clarence's side still faintly scented with his aftershave from Old Spice. But even in that golden haze of holidays and hugs, subtle tensions hummed underneath the laughter and the clink of forks on china, like the distant horn of a clipper ship fogging in from the grave's light. Easy to dismiss as the tea's rumble shaking the walls or the neighbor's dog barking at shadows, but persistent if you cupped your ear to the silence between songs. Siobhan's job at the Fleet Bank branch on Washington Street started to sour quick after Finn's arrival turned her world to diapers and deadlines. The teller's cage with its bulletproof glass too tight and transparent for her artist's soul that yearned for color beyond the green of currency stacks. The ledgers and loan applications she balanced between sips of vending machine coffee stifling the sketches she'd doodle absently on napkins during slow afternoons. Florals unfurling like dreams. Fiddles bowed with invisible strings. Horizons that stretched far beyond the branch's plate glass view of the common swan boats. Tommy's overtime at the pipe stretched longer with the recession's bite gnawing at the economy like a rat in the walls, bills piling up like the snowdrifts against the triple-decker stoop in January. His temper flaring short over spilled Cheerios on the kitchen floor or a supper delayed by a backed-up drain call from Savon Hill. Mom, it's just the squeeze of young family life. You remember the pinch with me as a toddler, right? The bank's brass breathing down my neck, Tommy's wrenches slipping from exhaustion. She'd sigh over crackly phone lines during my breaks at the Oyster House. Finn's babble a joyful but distant underscore in the background. His toy truck crashing against the receiver like punctuation. I'd nod into the receiver, wiping shucked shells with a rag that smelled of brine, ignoring the pinch in my gut like a bad oyster turning sour. Our holiday invite starting to thin from the ritual, every year without fail, to a hesitant. Maybe next year if the shifts align and the boys' fever breaks. Excuses coming flaky as overbaked pie crust from the Pillsbury doughboy, chalked up to the new parent fog that clouds judgment like the harbor mist at dawn. Once, after a rare Sunday brunch at the Friendlies on Morrissey Boulevard, pancakes drowning in artificial maple syrup that stuck to the roof of your mouth, Finn smearing his face with strawberry topping like a tiny abstract artist. I caught Siobhan's eyes drifting to the napkin she'd absently sketched a palm tree on, swaying lazy under an impossible sun, far from the bare elms lining the avenue outside. Dreaming of warmer climes already, love? Away from this Yankee chill. I teased, ruffling Finn's curls to break the spell, and she laughed it off with a wave of her fork, but the seed lodged deep, sprouting doubts in the quiet hours. Humor laced those early hints, my armor forged in the fires of Carrie stubbornness. At the annual block party on the avenue every 4th of July, fireworks popping over the harbor like celebratory grape shot from the USS Constitution's guns, Siobhan quipping over a plate of clam-baked clams steamed in newspaper as Tommy chased Finn with a sparkler fizzing bright. Mom, your hot flashes could light up the entire common single-handed. Maybe skip the full turkey spread next year, go Hawaiian potluck. With pineapple and Spam. I'd sweat her arm with a lobster claw still warm from the pot, laughing till my sides ached under the string lights strung between stoops. Girl at my age, the only elopement I'm planning is with a cruise brochure to the Caribbean. Clarence always said I'd look fierce in a muumuu, swaying to calypso while the waves wash away the winter blues. But inside, where the widow's loneliness pooled deep as the harbor at low tide, lapping at the pilings of my resolve, neglect began to whisper insidious. Thanksgiving 22. Her arrival late by a full 2 hours with the excuse of traffic backed up from the pike all the way to the tunnel. The table's candles guttering low in their holders by the time she burst through the door, cheeks flushed pink from the cold or something sharper. Tommy trailing behind with a bottle of Boone's Farm strawberry. Hill clutched like a peace offering and eyes averted from the congealed stuffing I'd kept warm under foil. The wine in the decanter had turned to vinegar's edge, the rolls hardened like accusations, but we toasted anyway to family and fortune. Finn's turkey hat from the craft fair on Talbot wobbling as he banged his spoon on the edge of his plate like a tiny drummer boy leading a parade of one. His giggles the only glue holding the evening together. Subplots simmered soft in the background of those gatherings, adding depth like the undercurrents in the Neponset River. My loyal neighbor Mrs. Kowalski from the second deck, the Polish widow with pierogi wisdom passed down from her babcia in Krakow and a rosary that clicked like castanets during her afternoon devotions, confiding over morning fence chats as we hung laundry on the shared clothesline that sagged between our yards like a confessional screen, the sheets flapping like flags of truce. That girl's eyes wander far these days, like she's sketching escape routes in her mind. Tommy's temper's brewing like a storm off the Cape, maybe chasing her dreams away before they can take flight. Temper? I'd shush her with a wave of my clothespin hand, the wood rough from years of use, chalking it to the squalls of young love and the bottle of Jameson they kept too handy in the cupboard above the fridge. Tommy's flask passed off as Irish courage for the long hauls. But the words stuck like burrs in the wool of my sweater, pricking when I least expected. Health journeys wove through it all, unbidden but unbreakable threads in the quilt of those years. Post-cancer, with the scars still pink and puckered under my blouse like road maps of battles won. I started those yoga classes at the Dorchester YMCA on the edge of Franklin Field every Wednesday. Downward dogs and warrior poses stretched out for these creaky hips the chemo had left protesting every twist, quipping to the circle of spandex-clad gals. Mostly younger moms from the neighborhood, but kind as kin. This warrior pose? Better than any therapy session for an empty nest or a hot flash ambush at the checkout line. Namaste, me darlings, and pass the mat. Relationships crept back in tentative as a spring lamb, a second chance spark with Pat Riley from the Senior Center's Irish step class on Gallivan Boulevard. Another widower, all lanky limbs and a brogue thicker than chowder from his days in the force before retirement. Our diner dates over cod cakes fried crisp at the clam shack on the avenue turning to laughs that eased the ache in my chest. You're the adventure I missed out on at 30. Fancy a jig at the Black Rose in the North End sometime. Or is the tea too much for these old knees? I'd blush under the diner's fluorescent buzz that hummed like a hive, self-love whispering steady in my ear. Pat, perfections for the pies I bake from scratch. I'm good with the real wrinkles and whims and all the wisdom a Carrie lass can carry across an ocean. And grandparenting? The twists they were pure joy laced with the sidelining pain of watching Siobhan juggle the world on her shoulders. Finn's visits to Nana's a whirlwind of chaos and cuddles. Lego forts built in the living room amid the quilts draped over chairs like tents. His small hands stacking blocks with the concentration of a cathedral builder, and bedtime stories from the big book of Celtic myths I'd bought at the Harvard bookstore on a whim, spinning tales of banshees and pukas till his eyelids drooped heavy, his hugs at departure a small joy that glued the cracks in my days. Nana, you're the best cooker in the world. Don't tell Mom about the extra cookies we hid in the cookie jar, okay? It's our secret. Yet the storm brewed subtle, relentless in its creep through the cracks. A missed call on my birthday in March, the one Clarence always marked with a single yellow rose from the florist's cart on the common. Siobhan's text pinging late into the evening as I blew out the lone candle on a cupcake from the bakery on Bowdoin. Swamped with overtime at the bank, Mom. Deadlines like the devil. Love ya. Dinner soon? Love ya. Breezy as a harbor breeze off Spectacle Island. Carrying the scent of freedom but leaving me chilled to the marrow. I planned that last big Thanksgiving with extra fervor that fall, polishing the silver till it gleamed like the golden cross on the dome of the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. The table set for 10 with the linen from my trousseau yellowed but starched stiff. Visions dancing in my head of Finn's turkey hat wobbling as he chased peas across his plate with a fork like a sword. Siobhan's sketches pinned to the fridge like promises of more to come. The air thick with sage and stories yet untold. Little did I know, her elopement ticket was already punched and stamped for some painter's paradise in Hawaii, the Aloha spirit calling her like a siren's song across the Pacific swells, trading the gray of the harbor for turquoise infinities, leaving me with TV dinners microwaved in silence and a postcard's hibiscus sting that would bloom into thorns for years, pricking deeper with every unanswered ring. The warmth we shared, built brick by laugh and holiday toast? It was fading fast, the first gusts rattling the windows like a warning from the old country, the banshee's wail growing louder in the wind. If this hearth glows tugging at your own heartstrings like a fiddle string pulled taut till it sings, give it a like. We're kindling a fire together here, one shared story at a time. Subscribe and tap that bell for more confessions straight from the triple-decker, raw as rye bread fresh from the oven and twice as nourishing, so you never miss a tale that hits home like a nor'easter on the shore. Those first post-elopement months stretched like the endless gray of a Boston February that refuses to yield, cracks forming in the foundation like frost heaving the sidewalk slabs on Dorchester Avenue after a hard freeze. Subtle at first, just hairlines you could stomp over with sturdy boots laced tight and a heart armored in denial, but they widened inexorably with every unchecked mailbox slot in the vestibule downstairs, its brass flag mocking me with emptiness, every out of service ringtone that buzzed like a mockingbee trapped in my pocket during a walk along the harbor path. Spring finally pried open the city's iron grip with a reluctant hand, tulips spiking defiant pink and yellow along the median of Commonwealth Avenue where the marathoners would pound the pavement come Patriots' Day, their breaths puffing white in the chill, and I threw myself into my wellness routine with the fervor of a penitent scrubbing the altar at St. Brendan's. Harbor path walks at dawn when the gulls wheeled overhead with cries that echoed my inner turmoil like a chorus of regrets. Green juices from the health co-op on Center Street, tart apple and kale blended rough in the machine's wine, chasing away the lingering echoes of cancer's fatigue that still dogged my steps on stairs, the bitter bite a reminder that some things in life retain their zest even when squeezed dry. But privately, in the quiet of the triple-decker when the tea's rumble faded to a distant hum vibrating through the floorboards like a fading heartbeat, the doubts deepened like roots cracking concrete under the weight of time, raw vulnerability spilling onto the pages of my spiral-bound journal from the drugstore on Bowdoin Green, its cover embossed with faded shamrocks. Siobhan, my Colleen with the artist's hands, why the silence now that the ocean lies between? Is it my menopause moods making me too much with my questions and quilts, or yours hiding something sharper, like a sketcher's secret palette of pains you never shared over tea? Early betrayals stung small but sharp as a nor'easter sleet pelting the windows, each one a pinprick that drew blood slow. Mother's Day dawned crisp with the lilacs blooming wild and fragrant in the narrow yard behind the house, their purple clusters nodding like sympathetic heads, and a potted mum arrived via UPS in a battered box that rattled on the stoop, its roots bound tight in plastic like my hopes wrapped in worry. No personal note fluttering out from the soil when I unwrapped it. Just Tommy's blocky script on the generic card tucked in the side, ink smudged as if written in haste. Happy Mother's Day from Finn too. Nana mo God bless and keep you strong. No call to hear my voice crack with thanks. No FaceTime glimpse of his freckled face lighting up the screen to unwrap the hug I'd been saving since the last awkward drop by, his curls now longer and wilder, a small boy growing without me. I carried that pot to the back porch, the glider creaking under my weight like an old friend's sigh as the harbor lights began to wink on across the water, their reflections dancing jagged on the waves, tears tracing slow paths down my cheeks and carving rivers through the powder I'd dabbed on that morning to face the world at the pantry. The tea clattered by below on its elevated track, cars packed with families heading to brunches at the seaport's fancy spots with mimosas and ocean views, and I wondered if Siobhan was sipping Mai Tais under swaying palms on some Waikiki beach, oblivious to the hole or ashamed of the shape she'd left in it. Quiet anger simmered come morning over my ritual diner coffee at the Greek spot on Broadway, the Formica booth sticky with ghosts of maple syrup from the breakfast rush, Mrs. Kowalski sliding in uninvited with her babushka askew and a styrofoam cup of her own black brew steaming. Emo oy vey, I heard the whispers at the early mass. Your Siobhan bolted like a rabbit from the hounds with some artist fella from the Cape Cod galleries, the kind who paints sunsets for rich folk in Hyannis Port. Tommy's ragin' like a bull in Pamplona, poor lamb, punching the bag in the garage till his knuckles bleed. Ragin'? The word lodged like a fishbone in my throat, subplot simmering low and hot. Tommy's motivations layered thick as the rashers he fried for breakfast, his ambition curbed by the endless grind of pipes and plungers in basements that smelled of mildew and missed opportunities for something more than calluses and callbacks. His temper flaring not from malice born in the bone but from the bottle he nursed after long shifts. A flask of Jameson tucked in his tool belt passed off as Irish courage for the holes that go to hell. I'd quip back through the steam rising from my mug, humor my trusty shield forged in the smithy of survival. Kowalski, if runnin' from life's cages was a sin straight to purgatory, I'd be canonized by now with a halo of hot flashes. Those power surges have trained me for marathons across the moors and then some. Her selfishness in the vanishing act crept in nuanced. Not the cartoon villainy of those penny dreadfuls sold at the newsstand on Talbot but the quiet desperation of a soul caged too long by circumstance. Siobhan's artist spirit, that wild Kerry wind whipping through her veins from stories I'd spun on stormy nights, stifled by the bank's brass ring chases for promotions that tasted of ash and the daily ledger's unyielding lines. The elopement a frantic dash toward canvas stretched taut under island sun rather than ledgers balanced under fluorescent buzz. Freedom sketched in broad strokes of turquoise and gold. Suspense built quiet as the fog creeping in off Thompson Island at dusk, a low thrum under the everyday clatter of the city waking. Commuters hustling for the tea, vendors calling from carts on the avenue. A small twist unfurling in an overheard call at the Y during my Thursday yoga session, the studio's mat sticky with sweat as Pat bent into child's pose beside me. His cell buzzing insistent from his gym bag on the shelf. Voice tinny on speaker as he fumbled to silence it with a curse. Yeah, Tommy, it's bad. She's shacked up with that painter from Provincetown, the one with the surfboard tattoos inked like Maori legends and trust fund oils that sell for 5 figures to the summer people. Hawaii bound next week, he says. Some shack on the North Shore where the waves crash like her temper used to. Broke her heart to leave the boy. But cages kill dreams quicker than a nor'easter drowns a dory. The boy. Little Finn, my red-cheeked anchor with the curls that begged for braids. My gut twisted sharper than a warrior pose gone wrong in the humid room, grandparenting's joy now twisted with the sidelining pain of visits rationed like wartime sugar stamps from the ration board. Those FaceTime scraps with him at Tommy's Quincy Ranch house, the screen pixelating his puzzled Nana? Where's the turkey stories and the cookies? As hugs became air kisses blown through glass. His curls a ghost of the wild mop-eyed tousle on the porch swing till he squealed. Highs crashed into lows with the rhythm of the tides ebbing and flowing under the long wharf, unyielding. A volunteer shift at the food pantry on Talbot Avenue that week, the air heavy with a metallic tang of canned beans and the quiet desperation of lines snaking out the door, where faces gaunt as my own reflection in the pantry's tinny mirror swapped stories over sorting bins of rice and ramen. Kids fly the coop high and far. We clip our own wings trying to follow or forgive, sighed Rosa. The Latina widow from Mattapan with her own daughter scars etched deep and a rosary that clicked like worry beads during the sort. I'd nod, passing her a stack of tuna tins with pull tabs that stuck like gilt, resilience flickering like the fluorescent buzz overhead that hummed a lullaby of endurance. My quilt's gaining traction on Etsy now, orders trickling in from as far as Salem's witchy shops and Brookline's brownstones. The sales funding not just skeins of wool from the craft store, but a solo getaway dream to the Berkshires where the hills rolled gentle without the harbor's harsh edge or the tea's insistent reminders of time passing. Emotional lows plunged deeper still, abyssal as the drop-off beyond the harbor's breakwater. Nights pacing the creaky stairs of the triple-decker in my slippers worn thin at the toes. Clarence's framed photo on the mantel in the hall watching with those fiddler eyes dark and judgmental in the lamplight's yellow pool. The widow's loneliness a fog thicker than the pea soupers that grounded flights at Logan every January, wrapping around my throat till breath came short and ragged, the bed. Upstairs a vast sea where I floated anchorless. Anger bubbled up unbidden over a solo bowl of New England clam chowder at the kitchen table, the spoon clinking against the china bowl like a gavel calling order to chaos. Colleen, I hosted your whole world in this house. Thanksgivings that fed body and soul with more than meat and mash. Stories that wove us tighter than any quilt. Where's my place in yours now? Some postcard paradise with palms and paints, or just the afterthought? Subplots layered thicker than the fog on a fall morning, adding depth to the unravel like the undercurrents in the Neponset that snagged the unwary. Loyal Pat, with his step-class shuffle and easy grin that crinkled his eyes like parchment, turning reluctant confidant over cannoli dusted thick with powdered sugar at Mike's Pastry in the North End after a rare date that stretched past curfew. The streets alive with accordions and the scent of espresso. Dating at 65's no joke, it's like bingo. Night with a side of butterflies in the belly. But if it helps ease the ache, Tommy's fit to be tied tighter than a fisherman's knot, muttering about lawyers on Pemberton Square and stealing his boy from the life they built in Quincy. Humor laced the hope he sparked in those moments, self-love firming like good dough rising under a tea towel. Pat, save the butterflies for the luau Siobhan's chasing across the waves. I'm the prize here, wrinkles mapping the roads I've traveled, whims as wild as the wind off the cliffs, and all the wisdom a Carrie lass can carry across an ocean in her heart. But the cracks widened relentless, spider-webbing out. Finn's 4th birthday rolled around in May with the lilacs in full, riotous bloom. Tommy's invite via text pinging my flip phone. Drop by the ranch after the cake and candles, the kid misses you something fierce. And I baked a batch of shamrock cookies from Clarence's handwritten recipe card yellowed with age, green-tinted sugar stars that crumbled soft and sweet under the knife. Visions dancing in my head of frosting fights in the kitchen like old times with Siobhan, her laughter ringing as globs of royal icing flew. The drop-by turned awkward as a wake without the whiskey to smooth the edges. Tommy's Quincy split level smelling of fresh paint from a half-done Reno and stale tension hanging heavy as the air before a squall. Finn shy in my arms for the first hug in months. His small frame stiff as if hugs were foreign currency now. His eyes darting to Tommy hovering with a beer sweating in his hand, the edge in his voice sharp as a cock gun snip. She's gone for good, Chased some luau life with that paintbrush charmer who talks big about galleries in Honolulu. Left us high and dry like a boat run aground, but we'll manage the tide without her. Gone. For good. The words hung heavy as the harbor fog rolling in from the east, suspense humming low in my chest like the tea's approach. What luau life hid deeper drifts, ambitions blooming wild or affairs painted in secret strokes that pulled her across oceans without a backward glance. By summer's sticky embrace that clung to the skin like regret, the block parties on the avenue pulsed with life renewed. Lobster rolls steaming from backyard griddles fired with charcoal that smoked the air thick, fiddle tunes spilling from Bluetooth speakers wired to stoops where neighbors gathered in lawn chairs, kids chasing fireflies in the dusk with jars that glowed like captured stars while the harbor fireworks bloomed overhead like defiant flowers against the night. But my plate stayed empty amid the feast, the laughter ringing hollow around me like echoes in an empty cathedral after Vespers, the clambake's buttery scent turning my stomach. I confided deeper in Kowalski over afternoon tea on her second-deck porch, the shared clothesline sagging between our yards like a confessional screen strung with sheets flapping like flags of truce in the breeze. Feels like I'm the ghost haunting my own life now, Kowalski. Thanksgiving's looming empty, Finn fading like a sketch rubbed out too hard. She squeezed my hand across the railing, her knuckles knob-bled like mine from years of rolling dough and rolling with punches. Fight for the wee one, blood's thicker than the Charles at flood stage, but sometimes you gotta row against the current with both oars, or the tide takes you under. When I mustered the courage to fight, a voicemail left on Siobhan's long silent number after midnight when the house creaked its secrets, my voice cracking over the line like thin ice. Call me love. Finn needs his mother's voice to chase away the nightmares, and I need my daughters to fill this quiet that's louder than any storm. Whatever cage you're fleeing across those waves, we can build a door together, hinges and all. The response was nothing but crickets chirping in the harbor grass, the line beeping dead as a dropped call in a nor'easter's roar. The foundation shifted beneath me then, a low groan like the triple-decker settling timbers after a heavy rain, the storm's whispers rising from mere breeze to gale force warnings that rattled the panes and promised floods of feeling ahead, the kind that drown or deliver. If these fissures in the floorboards feel all too familiar under your own feet, like up. It's our way of patching as one, story by story, stitch by stubborn stitch. Subscribe and ring that bell. The quakes are quickening pace, but so is the quiet strength we'll unearth together from the rubble. Thanksgiving 23 broke it wide open like a nor'easter shattering the seawall at Carson Beach in a fury of foam and fury. The table set pristine in the dining room with the chandelier's prisms casting rainbows on the walls like false promises. Crystal wine glasses from the Waterford set Clarence saved for polish till they gleamed like the golden cross on the dome of the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. The turkey's golden skin crackling under the carving knife's edge as the clock in the hall struck. For with its solemn gong, when Tommy's call pierced the grace, I'd murmured alone over the empty spread like a bagpipe's wail cutting through a funeral march. She's eloped for real this time. Hawaii, with the painter fella. Some quickie chapel on the beach with lays and a ukulele. Postcards in the mail, she said. Don't wait up for her at the table, it's done. Heart-wrenching didn't cover the vice that clamped my chest. The foil TV dinner tray's microwave beep echoed mocking from the kitchen as I stumbled to the back porch glider. The November wind whipping salt tears across my face in stinging sheets. The harbor black as pitch beyond the chain-link fence that separated our yard from the alley's trash bins. Waves crashing distant but relentless against the breakwater like the beat of a heart gone rogue. Flashback joy crashed in waves then, unbidden and brutal. Siobhan at 16, standing on a stool beside me in the kitchen, basting her first turkey with a turkey baster too big for her hands, apron smeared with flour and ambition. Her mom's the heart of it all. Couldn't do a single holiday without you and your magic gravy. Ringing clear as the bells of St. Brendan's on Easter morn. Now. The empty chairs loomed like stern judges in a courtroom on Pemberton Square. The good china from the registry stacked and used in the hutch like relics from a life interred. The cranberry relish I'd chopped with the old mezzaluna till my wrists sang congealing in its bowl like blood from a fresh wound left untended. The stuffing sage scent turning cloying in the still air. Conflicts escalated fast and furious, cinematic in their cruelty under the city's sodium street lamp glow that buzzed like angry hornets. I stormed Tommy's Quincy Ranch the next dawn, the blue line tea rattling me over the Neponset River like a judgment train on rails greased with regret. The doors hissing open at the Shawmut stop where the wind off the water bit through my coat. Finn's hug at the door a fleeting high that pierced the armor. His small arms wrapping my waist with the desperation of a lifeline, curls tickling my chin as he buried his face in my scarf. Nana, turkey? Where's Mommy's laugh? Before plummeting to the low of Tommy's kitchen, Formica counters scarred from too many slammed fists and half-hearted suppers. His voice gravel rough as he poured coffee black as his mood. She feared the cage I built around us, Mo. My temper flaring like a blowtorch on a frozen pipe, the bills stacking higher than the snow on the ranch roof, the bank's noose tightening on her dreams till she couldn't breathe. Blame me for the bars. Not her for the breakout. Secrets revealed in drips that burned hotter than a hot flash in a sauna. Her hidden sketchbooks I discovered once in the attic while hunting for Christmas lights. Pages filled edge to edge with palm frond florals unfurling in impossible colors and ocean horizons that stretched endless. Ambition's flame kindled at a Cape Cod gallery show in Provincetown where she'd wandered alone one summer weekend, meeting the painter amid the dunes. A trust fund dreamer with oils that captured light like bottled sunsets, selling for 5 figures to the summer people in Hyannis Port. His smile promising freedom from the tea's daily grind and the ledger's unyielding lines. Stakes soared sky high then, gut twisting as a pretzel at a street fair. Whispers of custody battles brewing in family court on Pemberton Square. Paper served with the efficiency of a bank foreclosure. My grandparent rights frayed thin as old lace from Nana's chest. Finn's future kicked around like a football in overtime at Gillette Stadium. His innocence the only thing not up for grabs. Subplot turned bitter as wormwood. Kowalski, my loyal fence-line confessor with her pierogi heart, confessing over emergency tea that afternoon on her porch, the pot cooling untouched as snow-flurried light. I knew weeks ago, Mo. Tommy swore me to secrecy for the boy's sake, said the news would break you sooner than the elopement itself, like glass under a boot. Betrayed twice over in the span of a day, the anger rose raw and unfiltered over a plate of corned beef hash at the diner on Hancock Street. The fork scraping the plate like nails on a chalkboard as the grease sizzled forgotten. Friends? Or just more fences keeping the truth at bay like the harbor walls keep the waves? Jesus, Mary, and Kowalski, I hosted your holidays too. Pierogies and all. Where's the grace in silence now, when it's my table turning cold? Suspense spiked sharper than a nor'easter spike driving pilings into the mudflats, relentless. An overheard snippet at the food pantry that week, as I sorted donations under the fluorescent hum that flickered like a bad conscience. A volunteer from the parish, old Mr. Flanagan with his pipe and his pension checks, murmuring to another over bins of instant stuffing mix and canned yams. Heard Tommy burned her letters. Dozens from the islands, postmarked Waikiki, begging for understanding and a photo of the boy to pin above her easel. Poor Mo, none the wiser, left with postcards and prayers. Letters? Burned like heretic books in some dark age? My heart hammered like the T on a bad track through a switch, health woes weaving in unbidden as the stress coiled tight. A checkup at Kearney Hospital the next Tuesday, The waiting room smelling of Lysol and old magazines, revealing blood pressure spiking higher than the Prudential Tower, the doc in her white coat clucking her tongue like a hen. "Mo, this anger's a silent killer like the fog that swallows ships whole. Channel it into those quilts of yours that tell such tales, and for God's sake, get yourself to therapy at the center. It's armor after 50, not a weakness for the weary. Helps you own the storm instead of letting it own you." Highs flickered brief but bright as a match in the wind. A stolen park picnic with Finn the next Sunday at Franklin Park Zoo, the air crisp with fallen leaves crunching underfoot, his giggle a glimmer of gold as we fed peanuts to the elephants from the wire fence, their trunks curling like questions. "Nana, you're funner than Hawaii volcanoes. Do they have cookies there too?" His words a balm on the raw edges before the low of Tommy's pickup truck rumbling up the path, pulling him away too soon with a wave that lingered in the air. Lows plunged abyssal as the drop-off beyond the harbor's breakwater where the currents pull strong. The postcard finally arriving mid-December, its glossy hibiscus glaring from the mantel like a tropical taunt amid the pine boughs. Siobhan's script loopy and light. "Living the dream, Mom. Found my canvas here under the sun. Finn okay? Send a pic of the table. Aloha and sorry for the silence." Sorry. One word tossed like a lay over a cliff for oceans crossed and hearts left adrift? Quiet hope guttered low as Yule approached with its carols and candles. Me at Pat's Dorchester bungalow for a low-key tree trim in his living room strung with popcorn garlands, his fiddle scraping a halting silent night, while eggnog warmed my veins with nutmeg's promise. But my heart wandered the empty triple-decker miles away, regrets raw as peeled potatoes left to brown, the silence screaming louder than any carol sung off-key. Turmoil peaked in the Christmas blizzard that year, snow blanketing the avenue in a white hush that muffled the world, the power flickering ominous as I shoveled the walk alone in the pre-dawn gray. Pat's offer of company over the fence waved off with a gloved hand. "Go warm your bones by your fire, lad. I've got the storm to wrestle solo like always." Inside, the tree's lights twinkled lonely in the bay window, strung with ornaments from Siobhan's childhood. A clay dreidel she'd made in Hebrew school despite our Catholic roots. Finn's gift of a lopsided clay shamrock from preschool propped beside the postcard like a plea, and I sank into the armchair by the hearth, the fire crackling feeble against the draft, sobs racking my frame till my ribs ached like bruised from a fall. Widow's loneliness amplified tenfold by daughter's desertion. The empty mantel where family photos used to crowd now a gallery of ghosts. The break? It left a chasm wide as the Fort Point Channel at low tide, mud flats exposed and treacherous. But from its depths, resilience's rope began to dangle, faint but unyielding, knotted with the threads of quilts yet to be sewn. If this snap in the timbers echoing your own fractures with a crack that reverberates, drop a like for the hold it gives us both. Subscribe, bell ringing loud and clear. The shadows are swallowing deep as the harbor's maw, but the sparks of strength? They'll save us yet, one flicker at a time. Solitude deepened to an abyss after that blizzard Thanksgiving, the postcard's ink fading on the mantel like hope bleached by too many harbor dawns breaking gray and grudging. Every rumble of the tea below the triple-decker a taunt of lives moving on without pause or pity. Suspense twisting like the radiator's insistent hiss in the hall into plots I couldn't outrun or outstitch with my busiest needle. Winter gripped Boston in its iron fist that year, unrelenting as a landlord's notice, snow blanketing the clapboards in drifts that buried the stoop up to the railing, and I huddled in the kitchen under one of my own quilts. A patchwork of Clarence's ties from his cop days, silk blues knotted with Siobhan's christening gown from St. Brendan's, the colors muted as my moods in the lamplight, menopause chills mocking the hot flashes with bone-deep shivers that no hot toddy spiked with cloves could chase from my joints. Despair's descent was slow but cinematic, the lows crushing like the weight of untouched snow on the porch roof sagging under the load. Nights curled fetal in the brass bed upstairs, sobs echoing off the empty rooms where Finn's toys still gathered dust in corners like forgotten offerings. The widow's loneliness a fog eternal and suffocating, thicker than the pea soupers that grounded flights at Logan every January and turned the city to whispers. Anger simmered quiet over bowls of pantry soup ladled from the pot at the Talbot Avenue Center, the spoon stirring endless circles like my thoughts trapped in eddies. Siobhan, your dream island life with its endless sunsets. Does it taste of TV dinners heated in silence and tears salted like the sea, or just the salt of regret for the table you left cold? Twists intensified the suspense relentless as a Cape gale whipping the dunes, unyielding. A hidden letter surfacing in the attic one blustery afternoon, as I sorted Clarence's old fiddle cases for the senior center auction on Galavan, the dust motes dancing in the slanted light from the gable window like spirits roused. Her runaway note from months back, tucked in the lining of a violin case like a violin's unspoken lament. Fears the chain binding me here in this gray, Mom, the bank's ledgers. Closing like jaws, Tommy's storms raging like the nor'easters that flood the basement. My sketches screaming for sun and space to breathe. Forgive the flight across the waves. It's not you and your warmth, it's the cage that's killing the color in me. Fear's chain. The words blurred through fresh tears that splashed the yellowed paper, grandparenting sidelined pain twisting sharper than a quilter's shears. Finn's calls sparse now, Tommy's voice gruff and guarded on the line from the Quincy landline. He's down with a cold that's lingering coughing like a seal, next week for sure if the fever breaks, leaving me with voicemails of his small coughs playing on loop in the quiet kitchen. Hugs reduced to air blown through the phone speaker. His curls a ghost in my mind's eye. Wild and in need of Nana's comb. Overheard plots piled on at bingo night under the night's fluorescent buzz that hummed like a hive of secrets. Mrs. Kowalski leaning in amid the B-14 calls and the slap of daubers on cards, her whisper hot and hurried as the pot built. Tommy's datin a nurse from Quincy Hospital now blonde with a laugh like breaking glass. Finn asks for Nana less and less, poor lamb says. Hawaii's where Mommy paints rainbows and the fish fly out of the sea. Rainbows. The irony burned hotter than a rogue flash, isolation peaking as the solstice sun dipped earliest behind the State House dome. The tree in the living room bay window bare of ornaments save a single tinsel strand, its needles shedding like regrets onto the rug in brittle brown heaps. But glimmers of inner strength pierced the gloom persistent as lighthouse beams through squalls, small joys like stars pricking a Kerry sky heavy with clouds. My volunteering at the shelter on Columbia Road ramped up to twice weekly, quilts donated in bundles that wrapped grateful shoulders against the cold seeping through thin walls, the hobby shifting to a quiet business with Etsy orders doubling month on month. Folks from Back Bay brownstones to Brookline's leafy lanes snapping up Harbor Laments series for their walls, the sales funding not just skeins of wool from the craft shop on Center but a second act spark that warmed the ledger. Therapy sessions at the center where the counselors nod over chamomile tea unlocked the locks. After 50 it's armor, not for the battles already won and scarred over, but for the ones you choose to wage now, owning the storm's fury instead of letting it rage unchecked. Grandparent pain lingered, a twist in every missed milestone that knotted the gut. Finn's preschool holiday play at the church basement, Tommy's text pinging cold. Snow day closed the roads, can't make the trek, video later? But hope flickered in a contraband photo he smuggled via Kowalski's guilt, me and him finger-painting shamrocks on construction paper during a stolen afternoon, his grin wide as the harbor mouth, a hug captured in pixels that I pinned to the fridge like a talisman. Relationships woven real talk tough but tender, Pat's persistent dates through the slush, a winter walk along the harbor path where ice skimmed the edges like frosting on a frozen cake, his arm linked steady through my coat sleeve. Hawaii's overrated with its tourists and tsunamis. Too much sun bleaching the soul, not enough salt in the stories. Boston's got the heart rough and ready, and you've got mine if you'll have it. No strings but the ones on the fiddle. Humor amid the tears that froze on lashes. Pat, at our age, a walk's as good as a waltz in the Black Rose. Save the hula hips for Siobhan's postcard palace. I've got enough sway from these hot flashes. Suspense built relentless as the tides pull. Another twist in a late-night call from an unknown Cape number that lit my phone like a flare. The painter's sister voice hesitant as a first confession. Maureen? It's Lila from Provincetown. Siobhan's trauma runs deeper than the dunes. Her Dawes echoes in Tommy's thunder. But the islands hide her own scars from the bank's grind. Ambitions cost in lost years and canvases burned in frustration. Scars. Her unspoken battles. Perhaps the anxiety she'd sketched away in secret sessions with a therapist in Back Bay. The weight of dreams deferred turning to lead. Strength glinted brighter than a needle's eye in the dark. I packed the Schwinn's basket with quilts folded neat for a pop-up sale at the Flea. The road to the Cape calling like a siren's countersong. Curves promising air untainted by harbor salt and the freedom to stitch my own horizon. Shadows loomed long across the floorboards. But the light? It was mine to kindle. Stitch by stubborn stitch, in the quiet forge of the kitchen where the tea kettle sang its solitary song. If gloom's got you huddled in the corner like a forgotten ornament tangled in tinsel, like for the glow it stirs in the telling. Subscribe, bell on tight as a fisherman's knot. The echoes are emerging from the dark, guiding us home stitch by stitch. The climax surged like a harbor tide at full flood, unstoppable and surging, spilling over the sea walls of my resolve as spring's first crocuses poked tentative heads through the Dorchester snowmelt that lingered in shady patches. My ticket to Honolulu punched with a hard-won Etsy earnings from a winter of weaving and the quiet prayer-eyed murmured to St. Bridget over the last skein. Suspense crested on the red-eye flight's interminable hours, the Pacific below a glittering unknown vast as regret, landing in humidity thick as chowder fog that clung to my skin like unanswered questions. Siobhan's beach shack on Oahu's north shore a ramshackle lean-to of driftwood and dreams weathered by trade winds, waves crashing judgment against black volcanic sand that crunched under my sneakers like brittle bones. Confrontation erupted raw onto the coconut palms swaying lazy, their fronds rustling like whispers from the old country. Her face sun-kissed but shadowed as I thrust the burned letter copy. Smuggled from Tommy's trash via Kowalski's guilt-ridden handoff over fence tea. Colleen, why the vanishing act across these endless blues? Fear's chain? I forged your wings with every shift and story, hosted every holiday till the table groaned, wiped every tear from your cheek with my apron, and you clipped mine with silence. Tears flowed saltier than the sea foaming at our feet, her motivations unpacking in sobs that shook her frame like a squall. The painter's love a bomb poured on the burns of the cage she'd felt closing in. The bank's ledgers like iron bars, Tommy's thunderous tempers echoing Clarence's rare flares but amplified by exhaustion. Her ambition's flame guttering low till the island's light rekindled it, but at the price of hidden regrets that haunted her easel at dawn. Regrets every single dawn here, Mom. Finn's face floating up from the waves in my dreams, your table empty because of my flight, the quilts you stitch alone now. Tearful reflections poured like rain on the tin roof of the shack relentless. Me recounting the Thanksgivings in detail, the prom pins that pricked my fingers but not my pride, the cancer couches where she'd held my hand through the nausea waves. You were my miracle, love, born in that blizzard to light the dark. Don't make me a ghost in your paradise, fading like ink on a postcard. Twist gut punched from the blue. Tommy's letters, burned in the ranch's barrel fire but copied by a remorseful Kowalski who'd fished the ashes. His temper's mine to flee like a selkie from the shore, but the boy suffers the wake. His hugs half-hearted now, humanizing the hurt with strokes of shared fault, stakes peeking in a FaceTime call with Finn mid-beach, the screen lighting our faces as his mommy. Nana! Come see the fish! Bridged the oceans in pixels, custody vows exchanged in whispers over the waves' roar. Shared summers here under the palms, winters home by the harbor, boundaries drawn like quilt edges, not bars to bind. Bittersweet closure woven slow, the threads pulling tight. Forgiveness with fences firm as the breakwater. Visits mandatory like Mass on Sunday, vanishings vetoed forever. Empowerment subtle as a selkie slip back to sea. My quilts boomed with an island echoes line inspired by the sands, patterns of palms and waves selling out at the flea, Pat's proposal over Fenway Franks on a bench in the outfield grass. Marry the adventure, Mo, not the memory. We've got jigs left in these legs. Aging as quest in every stitch and step, the table set once more not empty but earned through the unravel. Echoes lingered poignant as the fog lifting, regret salt lingering on the tongue like sea spray, redemption spice blooming slow in the sun, the holiday hearth kindled anew with stories yet to spin. If these echoes are humming your own hidden tunes like a fiddle half-remembered, like and linger in the resonance they bring. Subscribe. Pains may pass like tides, but the powers we persist with? They echo eternal, calling us home. Unspooling this yarn leaves me lighter, like airing out a musty attic full of fiddle cases, faded veils, and the ghosts of graces unsaid. Dusty with the year's accumulation, but daylight's kind now, slanting in through the gable to highlight the patterns we missed in the weave, the knots that held despite the pulls. Family bonds? They're threads in a Celtic knot, darlin'. They tangle easy from the pull of fear or ambition's wild wind whipping unchecked, but with resilient weave from hands that know the needle's bite, they hold if you reach 'em right, not by careful knot, forgiving the fray but honoring the fiber. Siobhan's flight across the waves to chase her canvas dreams, Tommy's flares like summer storms off the cape that rattled the ranch. They weren't born of evil hearts twisted dark, just echoes of pains we all carry like burdens from the old sod. Her artist's terror of cages closing and echoing my own post-cancer cages of chemo chairs that confined in Clarence's empty side that echoed hollow. His grunts hiding the blue-collar blues of pipes that paid the bills but never the promise of more. They bottle a crutch for the crawl. Us 50-plus lasses, with our Kerry Queen's crowns tilted proud or Dorchester divas grit ground fine. We host the hearts of homes turned havens, Thanksgivings laden with more than turkey and trimmings, hot flashes weathered with wry smiles that turn surges to stories, widow vigils kept through long nights when the harbor fog presses close, only for neglect to ghost us silent as a banshee's sigh, loneliness in old age a thief stealthier than any leprechaun snatching pots at dawn. But resilience? That's our fiddle tune, played low and true through the peat smoke. Therapy after 50 isn't a crutch carved hasty. It's armor laced soft as air and wool but sure as the cliff standing sentinel, helping us own the ache's edge instead of letting it slice unchecked. Forgiveness comes with boundaries drawn firm as the breakwater stones. Reconcile the prodigal returning sun-tanned and sorry, yes, but reclaim your seat at the table's head. Set the terms like a quilter set seams, not just the suppers that steam, and watch how the prodigal returns changed, the knot tighter for the tug. Redesign those later years as a grand quest across uncharted moors, not a quiet fade into the fog. Quilt your empire from scraps of sorrow turned strong, date with the wry humor that turns butterflies to belly laughs shared over cod. Perfections for the pies we bake flaky and fine, we're the crust that holds the filling true through the oven's heat. Health hikes through the battles we wage? Weave 'em with the humor of survivors who laugh at the scars. Hot flashes as power surges lighting our path when the way darkens. Scars from the fights as the stories we tell at block parties under string lights. Badges of battles that built us bolder. Grandparenting twisted sidelong by distance or divorce. Hug fierce in the scraps of time you get, turning every visit or video to a legend that lingers, a thread in the tapestry for the boy or girl to pull later. We're a diverse tapestry stitched bold, Kerry immigrants with brogues and burdens, Polish pierogi makers with prayers in two tongues, Latina widows from the neighborhood with fire in their step, all dauntless in our doing, aging not as anchor dragging the chain but as adventure with the wind at our backs if we turn to face it full, sails billowed. Stitch bold into the next seam of the days, dears. Regrets may fade like postcard ink washed by waves, but the redemptions we rise to? They rise with us, brighter than any harbor dawn breaking gold over the water, calling us to the table once more. Thanks for sup pin at Marine's table through the storm's howl and the shine's soft glow. Friends, your listens fill those empty chairs with the warmth of kin we choose, one ear at a time. If her holiday hollow rang true in your bones like a distant fiddle's cry or a tea's rumble in the night, share your own feast-famish tale in the comments below. We're feastin' on these truths together, comment by comment, building a quilt of our own. Like if it landed home, subscribe for more hearth heels straight from the triple-decker with its rattling panes. Bell on, because the storms pass but the stories? They stay, woven deep. Share the spice with a friend who's weathering their own nor'easter. Next up, a grandma's heirlooms stolen by her own blood. Thefts that thread deeper than any knot we tie. Slaint from foggy Dorchester. May your tables always overflow with more than memory.